to season 4 of Royals, Rebels, and Romantics. I am so excited to be here with someone who's become an online and chatting friend, and I'm so glad to bring her to you, Kathryn or Katie Holeman, a wonderful illustrator. And I thought it would be so interesting and fun for us to understand different ways of seeing and visualizing and illustrating history. So, welcome, Katie. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I think it's going to be just great. And we do have some visuals for you. So, if you're listening, I would encourage you to try and take a peek to the YouTube video because we are going to be showing, and it's especially fun when we're talking about images. So, let me just start by asking a little bit about you. How
Sure.
did you begin your journey as an artist in general? And then,
Yeah.
particularly, you've sort of focused on literature, Jane Austen stuff, and history. So, can you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that journey?
Sure. It's a kind of a long one. Just it's amazing how so much changed along the road. I would have never guessed when I was little that this would be my path, even though I'm absolutely in love with this path. I had no clue that this would happen. And everything felt like, you work toward being something and doing something, but your life can just take all sorts of different directions based on who you meet, who
Hmm.
you connect with, what they're doing, how you collaborate. So I just love that part of all of this.
Right.
Um, I would say I started being an artist at the age of 4. That's what my
Uh,
mom would say. Um, now that's not to say I was an amazing artist, but I think a lot of it. I'm very thankful to my parents because they certainly showed support for my passion. And as a mom now, I look for that in my kids. And unfortunately, a lot of that has to do with getting them off the screen. Oh, you're interested in something not related to Roblox? Let's
yeah.
do that instead. But at the
Right.
time, I think my parents definitely saw that I would prefer to be drawing.
Yeah.
And they and my teachers too. I remember drawing in preschool and they would say, she really loves this. And my mom still has a painting I did of a dog in up on the wall in the guest room of their house.
Oh, that's great.
But a lot of that support guided me. They signed me up for all sorts of, arts clubs and craft clubs, and that continued through high school art. And I think too, I don't know. I just remember watching like Mr. Rogers growing up and
Hmm.
being entranced by the crafting segment. I
Mm.
would watch Bob Ross. So before YouTube, right, I would be on PBS trying to find
Yeah.
all the art channels. And
Right.
I would just be shocked whenever he put the happy little tree in the middle of the landscape, but it worked and he did it.
Hmm.
I loved cartoonists. I tried to be like the artist who did Calvin and Hobbes. I had all those books and I would try to mimic that
Ah.
style. So
Hmm.
I've always tried to learn from others. And I also love drawing Disney princesses. And I think that to
Oh.
me, what I get to do now has a little bit of that to it. I love
Yeah.
elaborate costumes and patterns and embroidery and things like that. And that is, I love that that still connects to what I loved drawing when I was little.
Okay.
Um, I did, I studied art in college, not at an actual art school, but at a liberal arts school. And I focused on fine arts. And at the time, I thought, okay, well, how am I going to make a living doing this? And I
Right.
think a lot of artists go into graphic design.
Hmm.
And I thought, that's the way I'm going to do it. So I became a production manager at a small publishing house in New York. And that was actually through an internship. So going back to connections you make along the way. I did not know I was going to be working in publishing, but that work through college and then that internship got me to that point. And that
Right.
changed the trajectory of, what I know today is print production, how to talk to printers, timelines, what goes into
Ah.
the whole process.
Okay.
So for me, I learned, yeah, like the business side, because I think
Great.
a lot of artists struggle with that part of it. And I do love it when people reach out to me with questions of where do you get your keychains made or how did you do
Hmm.
that? I
Hmm.
really do not gatekeep that stuff. So I think it's all about like, yeah, try it, do it, see if it works for you. Um, so I think, as I got into uh, being in the production side of things, I I was very business focused. And then it wasn't until my 20s when blogging was kind of a thing that I
Okay.
decided to start a crafting blog.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it was called The Lettered Set, and it was basically supposed to be stationery focused. And that's when I started designing stationery and wedding invitations. But I also had a segment where I would write about my favorite book covers. And I'm bringing this up because this was before the internet was, well, before I thought the internet was a scary place. It was just so fun to post these little craft blogs.
Hmm.
And one day I got an email from a nice young person named Natalie Gruninger.
Ah,
She
yes. Uh-huh.
she found me through a blog post that I had written
Oh,
about a book cover
uh-huh.
trend, and it was to do with, I think in her search for Anne Boleyn
Hmm.
illustrator, this must have popped in through the search engine magic,
Hmm.
because I had written about a book cover trend of the time where a lot of these historical fictions had a beautiful woman in a beautiful gown with her head cut off at the top, because I think the book cover designer didn't want to be like specific to the face, but a lot of
Okay.
book cover designers were calling it the, I'm sorry to say, they were calling it the Anne
The Anne
Boleyn
Boleyn.
style. And I don't approve of that, but that's what they were calling it. So I was writing about that, what that was, and she found me and reached out about that. And that was the beginning of my Tudor focused
Okay.
art. That was the beginning of all of that. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's exciting. I didn't
Yeah.
realize. I knew you'd worked with Natalie, but I didn't realize it had happened that way.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
great.
We've been friends. I did her, the job she wanted was a background illustration for her website based on
Hmm.
Anne Boleyn's Book of Hours. And
Hmm.
it was, I remember telling my husband, this is a dream. I love the Tudors. I had been obsessed with the Tudors show. I will say, like, I'm just going to put it out there. the, thing, the thing about my interest in the Tudors certainly started when I mean, I could say that I went to England and I went to the Tower of London, and that triggered my passion. And it certainly got me interested. I love looking at the past and
Hmm.
figuring out how people from the past lived. I
Right.
love imagining myself back then and what was it like.
Hmm.
That's definitely a lot of it. But when the show The Tudors came out, I was like, there's so much passion here, so
Yeah.
much romance.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'm sure, they certainly enhanced it for Showtime, but
Yes. Yes.
I think it is kind of the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes, and some of these you just can't believe some of the things that really happened. So
Right.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
that triggered my interest in that.
Well, that's great. And so then Natalie fed into that with this opportunity to do some art for
Yes.
her. And you've done more than, I'm just going to ask, because you've done more than just her background. So tell us a little bit more about what you've done with
Sure.
Natalie, because she's
Oh my
done some
gosh.
great things. Yeah.
Yeah, we really enjoyed working together, and as I said, we're friends. We went on a trip to England together. Both of our husbands were like, "You've never met this person in real life, but I hope that goes well for you."
Yeah.
And we had a great time. But yeah, that was when we were doing our second coloring book together. So we've done
Hmm.
we've done two. The first one was the Tudors, the main
Hmm.
overarching theme, and it's more of a broad stroke at the subject. And that was done with the History Press.
Hmm.
And then the second one we self-published. We were really excited to do a second one, but publishing is publishing, and you just don't
Right.
know what they're going to want to sell. So
Right. Right.
we're like,
Right.
let's just do it anyway. So we did Tudor Queens and Consorts,
Hmm.
and that's when like the production side of my knowledge came in, because I did have to design and print the book. I
Yes.
did all of
Yes.
that.
Hmm.
But then the coloring book aspect, the drawing these portraits and recreating them for a modern audience who wants to color them and feel like they're learning something at the same time, that's a fun challenge.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. And I love the idea of the interaction with the audience, right? They're going to be
Yes.
coloring and they're going to be interacting and learning. And that's so great. So I know that someone else had seen some of this work with Natalie and got very excited to work with you. So I'm going to turn around and grab. We have had Laura on the show to talk about this wonderful book. Twas the Night Before a Tudor Christmas. And she talked
Yes.
about creating the language and how the ideas came to her for that. But she also said, as she was hoping for an illustrator, she was so excited to find out you were available. So I'm going to
Yeah.
show a couple of spreads I really love
Okay.
here, just because I think this is one of my favorite Christmas books now. And I just want to show, if you don't have this, go get it. 'Twas the Night Before a Tudor Christmas. I love, I mean, it's
Oh,
just so gorgeous.
that's my
And
favorite spread too.
oh,
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful. And you see, what I love is, here's Anne dancing. I just love, I kind of wish this is how the story had ended, because it's just such a happy ending for them
Hmm.
in this one tiny moment. But I also wanted to show, because I think this is great too. In addition to the beautiful spreads, there's a page of some hidden images. And so again, it's interactive in the H&A, and then you can go back and you can see, oh, what do we see here on this beautiful spread? Again, you see the H&A, and you can see the bee necklace and all those kinds of things. It's
Hmm.
just so fun and rich and detailed. So can you tell us about, instead of a coloring book, working
Right.
with Laura on a narrative? It's a known story, and then we also have some really great stuff in the back. But
Yes.
tell us
Yeah.
about working with her to create this different kind of book.
Absolutely. And before we go into that, I will say my first children's book was this one, Ghost the Christmas Stag.
Oh,
And I
great. Okay.
learned about, um, I learned a lot about storytelling with that experience. This one
Great.
actually took almost 2 years to make
Wow.
because we were kind of learning as we went as to, let's make sure the story matches up with this exciting page turn, what
Mhm.
keeps the reader going visually to match the text.
Oh, great.
I just
Okay.
learned so much in that process, right? And so when Laura reached out, well, I did not waste any time jumping on that because we followed each other. I loved what she was posting. We were friendly online, and then she reached out, and I was like, yes. I mean, this sounds so fun. Not only is it Christmas, not only
Mhm.
is it a children's book, but it is the Tudors. And I just didn't think there was a lot out there. And I thought, let's jump on that
Yeah.
and do our own spin on it.
Mhm.
We had a lot of fun deciding what pieces, the little tidbits you pointed out, the
Mhm.
historical pieces should fit into this whimsical retelling because
Right.
we knew our audience was potentially younger. I mean, I think it
Mhm.
is definitely a great children's book, but we also knew
Yes.
the audience would be anyone who loves the Tudors. I mean,
Right.
if I didn't have my own copies here and I didn't make it, I'd be like, yes, I'm getting that. Absolutely.
I was so excited to
Um,
find it the first time. Yes.
so yeah, so I think with like the H and the A
Mhm.
symbology,
Mhm.
we loved incorporating those little details. When we talked about that grand the hall, the dining
Mhm.
hall scene, we looked to Hampton Court Palace. The
Yes.
tapestries that are there are
Mhm.
actually what I base those on. Those are parts of the Abraham tapestries.
Yeah, I'll just hold it up again, because it's
Yeah,
just, yeah, the details
and
are
we
just magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny what amount of research did go into it because when you look at it, you think, oh, it's so fun and colorful and yes, sumptuous and vibrant. That's what we wanted. We wanted something really compelling to get you into this. But with on that spread, particularly with the greenery, well, let's make sure we draw what they would have used.
Right.
What
Mhm.
kind of fireplace would they have had? We talked a lot about the fireplace and what the
Yes.
mantle looked like.
Yes.
It's just amazing how much goes into that. And
Mhm.
that too with character development. I started off drawing. This was I'm holding up the cover now, and this
Mhm.
was my very first drawing of Henry and Anne
Oh,
together
wow. Okay.
because yes, in a dream world, this is what we want them to be be like.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
Christmas is a dreamy time. It's supposed to
Yes.
be magical. So I think we did do some research on what the Lord of Misrule would look like.
Yes.
And when we were deciding on the colors for the characters, with children's books especially, my goal always is to make sure the reader is never confused,
Mhm.
especially visual learners.
Right.
I want you on every page to recognize that same character from the page before.
Yes.
So we kept the colors consistent with the costuming and
Yes.
that sort of thing. And so, would would we always have thought Anne Boleyn would be running down a hallway wearing her French hood? No, of course not in real life. But for the audience that was viewing
Right.
this, we needed them to know
Yes.
immediately, this is Henry
Yes.
VIII and this is Anne Boleyn. So what he's wearing in this, it's a cartoonish version of one of his portraits. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that was
Yeah.
recognizable as well. And there
Yeah.
are documents of the Lord of Misrule
Yeah.
around. It's kind of hard to find
Right.
specifically what he looked like because a lot of the drawings were from the 1800s.
Yes.
But when you read some of the accounts, some of them would mimic the royalty. So it was okay that he was in purple, and it was okay that
Yes.
he was wearing ermine.
Mm-hmm.
He did sometimes have bells on his,
Yes.
legs and things like that.
Yes.
And yeah, so we had fun playing around with how does this all translate to a children's book story. Yeah.
Well, it's just so great because those details, and as an author, and I'm often called a Tudor geek, so and I love that. So, but
Yeah.
I see, they're playing cards. Well, we know they did play cards and dice, and the way the chairs are drawn, that's very much I mean, you recognize
Yes.
things, and the type of food that's on the table. Absolutely, they were redressed in the swan, so those feathers would have been back on when it was presented to eat. And so it really is, and even when I think this was so cute, when you see Henry coming down the
Yeah.
stairs, and you just see his leg coming out, he's
Yeah.
about to arrive, and all of that it just draws you in.
Yes.
And I have read it to my little granddaughters and they
I'm
loved
so
it
glad.
too.
I'm so glad
Yes,
to hear that.
yes.
And the other thing, I like to put little tidbits in. So I love that story, Goodnight Moon. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just my dream to put a mouse in this,
Yes,
just somewhere running
yes,
around. So based
yes.
on a lot of the pages, you will see this little mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you reread it, I think what makes a book a classic is that you go back and you say, let's look for those again. Let's look for those little
Yes.
pieces. Yeah.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
having a page of things to look for was really fun because then we would go back and look for those things. And I love that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so that was a really exciting way for me to imagine this art and history and language all coming together in a
Hmm.
way that's teaching us differently. I think it helps us experience the history differently when we see it.
Yes.
So I really appreciated that. And I thought that was so fun to take a story we know and yet
Hmm.
make it a brand new story. And Laura talked about
Absolutely.
how this story really came to her and the language. And then we have a
Oh,
family tree, which I love because that's so hard to get it all right. But there it is. And that's
yeah.
also just really fun and helpful. So,
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones to do, the family tree, all those faces and it's a
yeah.
challenge to, and this is also with the coloring books, is what are the pieces from that portrait that
Hmm.
are going to help you as the viewer recognize that this is who that person is, in addition to seeing their name there, but we wanted to
Right.
make sure, well, that looks a little bit like the portrait of this
Yes.
person too.
Yes, and so one of
Yeah.
the things I loved with the family tree is because the women, of course, could look all the same, right? But they don't. In the
Right.
family tree, they all have their
Yeah.
own look, and it's really easy to say, "Oh, yeah, that's Mary Queen of Scots." That's the one I just immediately thought, well, even
Oh
without a
yeah.
name, I would have known who that was. I would have known who that was. And for the adult, because I think adults are reading this too, that's
Yeah.
just a
Oh yeah.
really fun detail that it's visually so rich and so specific, which
Absolutely.
I love. And to me as a non-artist, I don't know how you do that, but it's just so great when I can experience it on my side. So
Well, and I think Laura is an excellent writer. She's just really witty and quick
yes.
with her words in a way that makes you smile, makes you chuckle, but also gives you the information
Hmm.
that you need to learn things. And my mom read this book and she absolutely adored it. She said she didn't know all that. Reading Laura's
Hmm.
introduction about the Tudors was so
Hmm.
helpful for her. She's like,
Hmm.
I feel like I get it now.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. It is for such a wide range, and the writing complemented by the art just
Yes.
meshed really well together. We worked really well together. Sometimes, that's not always the case. So
Right.
I think we just had a good relationship on this
Well,
book.
and I feel like that comes out because little details like, yes, Henry does get upset and then Anne
Mhm.
calms him
Oh, yeah.
down. And you can see that. And when you know the history, you
Yeah.
know that, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just visually there. And then the language is, I mean, it's talking about his demands for a son, but it's written in such a light, fun way that it's just great. It's just, I just can't recommend it enough. So
I'm so
really, if you
glad.
don't have it, it's one of my favorites. And it was really easy to
Yeah.
find because some of the Christmas books get put away for Christmas, but no, 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 this one's out all year long. It's right on the shelf.
Nice.
Yes, absolutely. So let's take these two examples. So Natalie's and Laura's, just as a couple of
Mhm.
examples. How do
Right.
you think the illustrating, and you mentioned your
Mhm.
mom reading it. So how do you
Mhm.
think this can broaden our understanding of the history? So, as someone
Well,
like your mom who's new, or as someone who maybe
yeah.
is familiar with the story, but maybe hasn't thought about Christmas and
Mhm.
what that would have been like. So,
Yeah, I think it goes back to um, allowing the reader to become a visual reader as well. I
mhm,
think anytime you can incorporate a diagram or something to accompany factual text, or this was fiction but nonfiction. Yeah, what is that?
mhm,
Historical
right,
fiction,
right,
historical
right. Yes,
fiction text.
yes, yes,
Anytime you
absolutely.
can accompany the words with art, I think it's going to help not only the author help bring their point home. They're
Mhm,
gonna, if they hire an illustrator, or if it's a fully illustrated book, that's going to help the writing, and the author share their point even more and say,
mhm,
this is what I want you to focus on. These are the bits and pieces that when you're looking through it quickly, you're going to notice that. You're also going to read the text at some point. I mean, this is a children's book and Natalie's is a coloring book, but when you're reading something a little more heavy and word heavy, I think it's nice to have those visuals to break
mhm,
up the text, refresh your brain, and also pull you back into the text and say, oh, I think I remember reading that part about this portrait or this scene or this
mhm,
event that happened.
mhm.
Um, I'm always, I've always loved the map illustrations in like the Lord of the Rings books. And I think having a
Right.
map or a visual
Yes.
to really put in perspective where you are in this world, whether it's fantasy or real, helps. When I'm reading a nonfiction, I don't know about you, but I'm always jumping to, if there's an insert in the middle, I love photo
Yes.
inserts.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
those. I used to design those, and that was actually a really fun part of being a book designer. Just like,
Oh,
oh,
great.
this is the juicy part.
Okay.
These are the
Mhm,
pictures.
mhm.
So and then I think art has a role to play where it's informative but decorative. So I never want to distract from the text with my art, but I would like to enhance it and complement it. So in terms
Mhm.
of history and learning, I just think visuals are always great. I mean,
Yeah,
any teacher, I've my one of my sons is much more of a visual learner, and I'm just thrilled always when he can use those tools. And I
that's
think
great.
that goes for me too. And especially with the books, "Twas the Night Before Tudor Christmas" and the Tudors
Mhm,
coloring books,
mhm.
those are meant to be relaxing. We're not trying to stress anyone out or make you think too hard. So that, I think art can help you do that as well.
Yes, and you
Yeah.
mentioned, The Lord of Misrule, and I think
Mhm.
being able to see that, a character and sort of his facial expressions in addition to his very whimsical, his position, his posture,
He's
what his body's
performing.
doing. Yes, it's
Yeah.
very performative, and so you get that by looking at it, and
Mhm.
sometimes when you're reading in a different type of history about the Lord of Misrule, it kind of seems like a serious, oh, it's a job kind of thing. But in here, it's like, oh yeah, that's Misrule.
Yeah.
He's playing, he's teasing the king. He's like you say, he's reflecting in some way the royalty in the way he's dressed, but he's doing it differently in a fun
Mhm.
way. And I thought that character in particular really came. I mean, they all come alive, but that really brought that idea of the Lord of Misrule alive.
Thank you. He was really fun to draw. I think I loved drawing the physicality of him.
Yes,
And you're
yes.
right that when you read about him, when you read excerpts about that time, I'm a little bit intimidated by the whole thing. It seems like a lot, like not intimidated by the information, but it just seems like kind of a stressful thing. Was he a good guy, bad guy? Like, what
Right.
is this? And
Yes.
so is it chaos in a bad way? Is it
Yeah,
scary? So
right,
I think
right,
we wanted
right.
we wanted to make him fun.
Yes,
And
yes.
so yeah, yeah,
So he's not challenging the king in a negative way. He's teasing him and bringing out the fun side. So I thought that
exactly.
was great. And
Good.
that was really
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. And
So
I think too, well, and like and the other thing about art, sorry to
no, that's great. That's great.
when I do the Renaissance fairs, there's
Hmm.
these I meet so many interesting people who want to wear the art. Um,
Hmm.
they so we were talking about art accompanying text. A lot
Yes.
of people I encounter want art to accompany their body, their look. They
Oh,
want the
that's really
emblem, they want the
interesting.
t-shirt, they want the hat,
Hmm.
they want the whole costume. And that's
Hmm.
been really eye-opening. I started doing Renaissance fairs when my second book with Natalie came out because we thought, well, how are we going to reach this audience? And I happened to live very close to one.
Oh,
And I thought, let's just
great.
try this.
Yeah.
And that opened up a whole lot for me, just in terms of understanding in person what people were looking for. I had these
Okay.
decorations that were banners of the Tudor queens just to show what I do. And so
Right.
many people would be like, "Are you, can I buy that? Are you selling that?" I would buy a banner this big. And they
Wow.
didn't care how much it cost. They just wanted it.
Wow. Okay.
So I think art, I love how it can connect people
Yes.
and their interests. And that's also how my Jane Austen art and
Yes.
literature art came to be more prominent in my work, because I would go to these fairs with one or two things, maybe a note card featuring
Hmm.
the heroines of Jane Austen, and then
Yes.
people just wanted more, more, more. And I don't mind. I mean, that's another thing. I love the passion and the romance from the Tudors, but I could watch Pride and Prejudice,
Yes.
either of them, Colin
Yes.
Firth or Keira Knightley,
Yes. Uh-huh.
any time of day,
Anytime.
year.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So I just wanted to add that as in terms of what people feel when they see art and how it affects their livelihood and their day, and they want to
That's
have it.
really
Yeah.
interesting because it really can affect people in their day. And I'm glad you
Hmm.
brought up the Jane Austen because I know you have an area where you do that, which I
Yeah.
also love, and I've seen some of your work there. So,
Yeah.
and that's really beautiful. That idea of if you go to a collection of
Hmm.
Austenites, Janeites, I know they're called different
Yes.
things.
Yeah.
They
I
do
use both.
they have this passion and want more and more. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
great. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of people wanting more and more, there was a Tudor exhibition, and
Oh,
you can see it. Let's see behind me. I have a little postcard right there. But
yeah.
it traveled from the UK while the National Portrait Gallery was closed because it was a lot of portraits from there as well as
Right.
other places. Supposed to happen in 2020, but didn't, but then happened
Hmm.
these past several months. And so I saw it in New York, but you had a really exciting experience with it. It went to several locations across the United States. So tell us
Sure.
about that experience because I thought it was so cool.
Oh gosh, it was just the best. So I also went to the New York exhibit, and I love going into the gift shop after anything, but especially with the Tudors exhibit, I spent hours in there. I couldn't get enough of it. And when I was leaving the exhibit, I went straight to the table to see what they would have at the Met. Well, they had a book that was way out of my price range and not much else. And I thought,
Hmm.
wow, I feel like knowing what I know about what happens at Renaissance fairs,
Yes.
when I go to TudorCon, which unfortunately I don't live close enough to do that anymore, but when I did go, oh
Hmm.
boy, if
Hmm.
you bring the merch, myself included, I will buy the merch.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought, oh, is that a missed opportunity? For me, it would have been. And then I didn't, but I also thought, well, I'm not big enough for these big museums to have any interest. And then a couple days later, well, maybe a week later, I got an order on my website, Fair, Faire, is for wholesalers, and I have an account there, and I sell things, and I sell this. I'm
These are
holding it
so
up.
great. Yes.
This
Thank you for
Tudor
holding it
Rose
up. Yeah.
enamel pin, and the buyer ordered a few of those, I think 20 of those, and some stickers, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's the Cleveland Museum of Art, and she's ordering them for the Tudors
Wow.
because
Yes.
the due date was when the next exhibit was
Yeah.
starting, and
Hmm.
when I had to ship it. I'm getting chills just remembering this. I was like, oh my gosh, Cleveland Museum of Art wants my Tudor stuff at the
See,
front register area, like those little
that's
pieces you buy
great.
at the register.
Hmm.
And this is another beautiful thing about social media, even though it has a lot of bad stuff going on too sometimes, is that
Right.
I think in the Tudor community and you know, the art community in general, I have encountered just some wonderful people.
Right.
And one of the people who follows me on Instagram was like, I live in California and I want to go to the San Francisco one. Can I buy your pin there? And I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, no, not right now. You should reach out to them. Okay. So I drafted the most personal email I could. You know, I didn't know the
Mhm.
buyer personally, but I was like, "Hi," and it was so helpful that Cleveland had ordered some because I
Yes.
thought
Yes.
these are here with the exhibit. Would you be interested in having them
Mhm.
there with the exhibit? And this is a whole different ballgame. The Legion of Honor in San Francisco, I have heard from other people who live out there. They're like, "Wow, you got in that one," because the woman wrote back with like a "Thanks so much. Here's my purchase order." Very
Wow.
clear, like nothing like, oh, you know, I was very loving and
Yes,
I'm
yes.
over the top of my emails, like, I love your work.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't mind, but it was just like, here's my purchase order for 100 pens.
Oh, that's so
I didn't have
exciting.
100 pens. It was so exciting. I said to my husband, I don't have 100 pens. She didn't ask because it's such a big deal museum. I think that's just
Mhm.
expected. And
Mhm.
it turns out she was very nice. I was able to get some more made. I worked with my manufacturer to get them
Mhm.
made in time. She gave me about 2 months because I guess because I planned ahead and she plans ahead, we
Yes.
had time.
Yes.
So I got them to her in time. And then I say she was understanding because she reordered 100 more in end of June this year. They sold out. So she
That's
ordered even
so
more. And at
great.
that point, I said, I have 90. Is that okay? She said, that's fine. Just send me what you have. Send me anything you have. And I was like,
Oh,
okay.
see? That is
Yeah.
so great, and
Yeah.
I love that story. I checked ahead of time to make sure she was willing to share it, but I do love that story because it's just, you take that leap believing in yourself to reach
Yes.
out, and so in those 2 of this national, really big deal exhibit, your work was sold, which I just think is so great. So can you hold up the pins
Yeah.
again? So if
Yes, I can. Yes.
and we can also get them right from your shop now if we don't happen to be in Cleveland or San
Oh,
Francisco,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
I have now I have plenty. The chance of that. No, we'll see, but I have a lot. So I do have them in my Etsy store and I have my other website, which is more, I use two websites. I sell mostly on Etsy.
Okay.
Um, but I have another website as sort of a portfolio base that I sell from as well. It's just my
Okay.
name, KathrynHoleman.com, and we can put
And
that in the
I'll
notes or
have all this
something.
in the
Yeah.
show notes. Yeah, I'll have all this in the show
Yeah.
notes. So, but
Yeah.
I did want people to get to see them. All right. So, you
Yeah.
mentioned maps, and I know
Oh,
that's
yes.
something you've also been working on. So, you mentioned loving them. So,
Mhm.
tell us about working on some maps for some tours that are going on and some exciting things. So,
Yeah. Well, this goes to the connections that I've made through
mhm,
friendships and meeting new
mhm,
people. And uh, Natalie introduced me to Sarah Morris,
uh-huh.
and through that, we met up together, and I got to meet Sarah in person when I went to York with Natalie in I want to say 2018, and we've been very friendly. I've actually done some work for Sarah, some custom portrait work and other things she's needed along the way
Mhm.
to do with the work she does. But then when Tudor Places, which is an amazing magazine, I have a subscription. I have a digital
Yes.
subscription, so I don't have to like wait for it. But
Yeah,
I
me
kind
too.
of want the hard copy because I love flipping through those too.
Yeah, yeah.
It is just full of just so many amazing articles and information. And
Yes.
I was Sarah reached out and she said, I'm in a pinch. I'm sorry for this was last December. I'm in a pinch. I have a last minute deadline for a map. Do you have time? And I was like, yes, no question at all. I love drawing maps. And I think it goes to having an illustration to accompany text. I
Mhm.
think it makes the page so much more vibrant to have this piece that goes with what the person is talking about. Now,
Yeah.
Sarah's writing is fun. And I mean
Right.
it's a
Yes.
Tudor weekend. So there's nothing dry about that. It's
Yeah, right.
very enjoyable. It's an enjoyable read. You want to go there. You want to get yourself there. But I think the maps for those of us who aren't going to get there that
Right.
soon,
Yes.
it helps you immerse yourself in the article and picture where they are.
Mhm.
Sarah sends me the list of locations. She's so organized. She sends me the list of locations, a Google map for reference, and a list of things that she thinks would be helpful to include, whether it's, you know, the landscape, what's unique about this particular landscape.
Okay.
When we did something for the Peak District, she sent me a picture of the big wheel. There's a big sign that's iconic to the Peak District to draw, make sure that's in there. Just the little bits and pieces that help the reader feel like I see where we are on the map.
Right. Yes.
And it adds, it's a little bit whimsical. So of course it's not like you're going to pull out Tudor places when you're there and being like, I need to get on the M1
Yes.
over here. But
it's not a GPS, but
no, but it helps you feel like you know where you're going to be.
Yeah.
It puts you in the place.
It puts you in there. Yeah.
You can picture it. Yeah. Yeah. And those I do a little bit of both. For the whimsy of it, I start with watercolor. I will actually print out the Google map, put it on a light table, and use my watercolors over it on a piece of paper just to see the edges of the map and where I should be leaving room for things. And then I scan that. And then in the interest of time, but also making something really vibrant and eye-catching, I use my iPad to create the digital version, the digital illustrations on top of the buildings.
Okay.
And similar to what I've done with Twas the Night Before Tudor Christmas, you're not going to see the entire building. You want to get the gist of the building.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want the whole building. It would take up too much space or it'd be too tiny and you wouldn't see all the details. So
yeah.
I love looking at an old abbey and saying, what's my favorite part of this building? And sometimes I go online and I see what other historians are sharing or what what the tourism sites are sharing in terms of when you're visiting that place. So you look at the most iconic photo of a place and then kind of work from there.
Oh, so, that's a great point, because you can't show all of the building, but you can show the part that really sort of represents. So that's great.
Exactly.
Well, I love that idea of maps, and it really is very much taking us along with you a lot, through this article. We feel like we're traveling and get a sense of it. And I agree, that is so helpful and such an exciting thing to see you doing that. I just really love them.
Yeah, it's definitely a dream job. I love doing that. And then I did for the Philippa from British History Tours, I did a couple maps for her, and that came through from my work with Tudor Places. She had seen the maps and she said, I really like that style, and that was amazing to have that connection there too. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful. And as you say, I feel like you're right, online things can be iffy, but within these communities, I think people are often just so incredibly generous and sharing ideas and reaching out, and that is a wonderful story. And I had seen the one with Philippa too, so I'm glad you mentioned that as well, because it's really beautiful and exciting to see.
I would love to go on her tours. One day.
Yeah, I know. All of us in the US are like, okay, one day. Right. All right. So I'm wondering what you're working on now and what's coming up that we can look forward to seeing.
Yeah, I'm excited that I actually have something to share with that. So I sold out of Tudor Queens and Consorts last spring, early spring. And I actually also just moved houses. So I moved states. It was a big move and I'm still unpacking. And I just couldn't think about what was next for the book. And my husband said it, and then Natalie said it, and everyone said, we really missed that book. When is it coming back? Where is it? So the exciting thing is it is coming back, and I'm almost done with a lot of new drawings. We're going to be doing a new edition with some of the most loved drawings from the original, but with about 15 new drawings. This is one I'm excited. I'm going to, this is one I just finished. And I'm working really hard on getting all the detail. This is a portrait of Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
And I'm just focusing on what I've learned over the years with people who are colorists, because I love coloring, but I mean, when you really talk to a person who loves coloring, it's all about the details and the finite pieces. They don't, they want to make sure the lines are connected. And it's just interesting to see how, if you really love to color, you have a way you want it to be drawn too.
Okay.
So, so the 15 new ones are going to be like exciting. I'm just like, we have Thomas Cromwell, Thomas More. We have
Oh, great.
I'm gonna add a Mary Queen of Scots just for fun.
Yes.
I mean,
She's so
and
in that story. Yes,
she's so
yes.
in that story, and a new Mary Tudor, Queen Mary the First, a new one of
Oh,
her.
great.
Just really focusing more on some of the portraiture that existed versus I think with the first one I was reinventing what I felt like they looked like, but
Okay.
people really, and I'm the same. I understand they really want to see what they recognize. And so
Yes.
anyway, the next one's coming out. The other exciting thing about the next one is that we're doing it on demand. And this is a way that a lot of people can
Okay.
publish books these days where anyone in the world will be able to buy it because
That's
it'll
great.
be printed as it's ordered.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one we had, I had 1,000 copies in my house.
Right. Yes.
And I was a stickler for all those details. And in the last 6 years or so, a lot has developed and print on demand paper is getting better. And
Yes. Right.
I have faith that it'll be a good product and the people who couldn't afford to pay, and the shipping from the US anywhere
Right.
else
Yeah.
is
Right.
insane. And I
Yes.
never hold a grudge on that. Like I always felt bad. I'm sorry that you can't get it to you. I
Yes.
understand it's $12 to ship it
Mm-hmm.
to the UK. So,
Right. And it's
you
the
can,
same. Yeah. Yeah.
so
So now they
this way
can.
people, yeah, get it anywhere, anytime in like the next 2 days.
Oh, and see,
So,
that is
yeah,
really great. And I think,
yeah,
as you say, the quality of on demand is getting so much better that you
yeah,
can feel like it's going to look like the book you wanted, even though you don't get to hold it in your hand first. So
exactly. Yeah.
that's, yeah.
So that'll be in, we're probably going to time it with um, May 2024. We usually time our releases around big events,
Yeah.
most likely Anne Boleyn's
Mm-hmm.
anniversary of her death,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just celebrating her. That's usually, and I think the timing will work out that it'll be all ready and set to go by then. So that's the big one I'm working on.
That's great.
And yeah, anything else? I mean, we're coming up on the holiday shopping season and I'm continually thinking of new things to add. So I post all that on my social media channels and I mean, my brain is always working on something. So
Oh, that's great too.
we'll see. Yeah.
Well, we will put all this, but tell us for our
Yeah.
listeners where we can find you. And then, of course, I'll put it all
Sure.
in the show notes as well.
Absolutely. So it's kathrynholeman.com. And you can Google my name, even if you don't spell it the same way, you're going to find me because I guess I've been posting things for 20 years or so.
Yep.
So um, I'm on Etsy and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be under the same name. I try to make it just my name because that way people can find me anywhere that works for them.
Right.
You'll find me on Instagram. I have two accounts. I have Kathryn Holeman, and last year I started the Tudor Artist,
Mm-hmm.
and I started that so I could. I have this thing where I post a bunch of Jane Austen stuff on my other account, but I had I could see each time half the people loved something and half the people love the other thing. I'm like, well, let's just have two because I'm going to be pretty Tudor obsessed on this other one, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I get to be my free Tudor obsessed self.
Okay. Okay. Just all
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
all in Tudor. So yeah, and as far as the Etsy store, the things I'm working on adding are, I do more Christmas ornaments and
Mm-hmm.
keychains and phone cases. I have art prints and note cards and things that are actually printed, but I'm doing a lot more stickers and just
Okay.
accessories to decorate your laptop and decorate your
Right.
life.
Yes.
Just
Oh,
decorate whatever your
decorate your
fandom
life.
is.
I
I'm
love
trying
that.
to help you decorate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's great. Decorate your life is great. So we love
Yeah.
that. And you
Yeah.
mentioned, some people are decorating their bodies. And so that's good
Exactly.
too.
Yes.
So you can
Yeah.
put those stickers all over. I have
Anywhere you
granddaughters.
want.
You put stickers all over your face.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so that's great. Well, this has been such a treat. Thank you so much, Kathryn Holman, Katie to me, and many of our friends. But thank you so much. I love the idea of as you illustrate history and Jane Austen, we are really able to see it differently and sometimes see ourselves in it. I know as
Hmm.
I was reading, and I'll just go back to, 'Twas the Night Before Tudor Christmas because it's so fun. I could just imagine being there in that hall and watching him stomp
Oh,
in and watching the
that
Lord of
makes my heart
Misrule.
happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my ultimate goal, is to making you feel like you're there with the characters.
Yes.
So I'm so glad.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And again, my little granddaughters loved it as well.
Good.
Um, but I keep it out even when they're gone. Absolutely. Cause I love it. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. And of course, I will have all this information. Again, if you're listening and don't usually watch on YouTube, I would really encourage you because Katie's shown us so much of
Yeah.
our
Look,
work. And
I
if you
have
want to show up a
another
couple of, oh yeah, see, look at
the
that.
tea
Isn't
towels.
that fabulous?
I just happen to have that there.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
do give us a look, give us a watch this time if you can, and I'll have all this in the show notes and all the links. So thank you so much. It's been a treat. I will miss seeing you at TudorCon. I will be
I
there, but
know.
I am sad you're
Oh
not going to be
gosh.
there.
Oh,
So,
I'm sad to be missing it. I'm so glad I got to see you today.
yes,
And
this is
I'm
great.
so thankful. This was so fun.
This was so fun. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. We're thrilled to have you with us in season 4. I can't believe we're in season 4 as we keep shaking up history together. Thank you so much.